Riffical Records presents the East-West Vinyl Analysis with your hosts Mark Anthony Kay and Ken Keenan. Greetings, friends, and welcome to episode number 11 of the East-West Vinyl Analysis. We are back. It didn't take us nearly as long to come back with our next episode as promised. And happy to say that we are here and ready to do another great episode for you. Don't mind me this episode. I might be a little less talkative than normally. I've just gotten over a kind of horrendous flu for some reason that just struck me a couple of days ago, but feeling a lot better now. So forward and onward, as they say. So, as usual, I'm joined by my very good friend and co-host, Ken Keenan, on the West Coast in beautiful San Francisco. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm sorry to hear that you have been feeling ill. It sucks, especially during the summertime. It's no good, but here is okay. Everything's it's just been very hot, very hot. I'm just waiting for it to cool down.
Yeah, I mean that seems to be a thing that's going around everywhere I see. I mean, I've been watching a few things and I've been watching a few sort of things happening in Japan because I'm following the wrestling thing there, and they're saying that they're having tremendous heat over there as well. I think the heat is just going everywhere this year, which is kind of a odd situation, I think.
Yeah.
Kind of a global warming thing, if you ask me. But
I don't know, maybe.
But we're not here to talk about global warming
No.
and the effects of science. We're here to talk about vinyl records and some of our favorite records. And what is the topic for this week, or this month, sorry. This time we've decided to focus on a specific year and talk about 3 records from our collection from that year. Probably our favorites, maybe our favorites, who knows? We'll see when we talk about them. But they are from the year 1980, in a year that, from what I seem to have figured out, is a year that quite a few good records came out on. So this should have been pretty easy. At least it was fairly easy for me to find 3. It was just which 3 to pick from those that we had. So with that in mind, how about I go first this time? I believe last time we had you go first, and
right.
just to get me kind of rolling in the groove of things.
All right.
I'll go first. So my first selection is one that's going to be probably not too big a surprise for people that know me and know my love of progressive music. It's not probably the one that you're thinking about. It's not a Canadian band. But this record did come out in 1980, in March of 1980, March 24th to be specific. And at this point, I guess you could call this album part of the transitional period of the band. They had gone through some pretty big changes. They had gone from a 5-piece to pretty much a 3-piece at this point, at least in studio. And funny enough, this album ended up being one of their biggest sellers. And the album I'm talking about and the band I'm talking about is Genesis, and it's Duke.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, this is a really great record. I mean, if you take a look at what's on this, I mean, you have Turn It On Again, you have Behind the Lines, and there's all kinds of great songs in here. Misunderstanding, Gatefold. And it's a really, really strong record, I find. They went to Sweden for this, Stockholm, if I'm not mistaken. And this was the last album that they did with I forget, David Hensel, I believe his name is, the producer. He did the last bunch of records before with them, but this was the last one that he did with them. And again, a lot of people, and this is what I find interesting, is a lot of people are sort of mixed on this album. Some people find that they really like it, they think it's strong. Some people frown at this record, saying that it is the beginning of the commercial side of Genesis that people started to dislike and blamed Phil Collins for. Now, around this period also, Phil Collins had put out Face Value, which is interesting because some of the songs that didn't make it on his album, the solo record, appear on this one, which
Okay.
is which is interesting because I didn't really know that at first. But the song "Please Don't Ask" was originally supposed to be on his solo record, and he decided against it and put it on the Genesis record instead. It's interesting. There's a lot of things in here that happen that people were kind of either cool with or not cool with. Like, for example, Phil Collins started using something called a Roland CR78 drum machine, and it added these kind of really odd textures. Like at the beginning of Duchess, there's like do 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 do, these little weird rhythmical things on there, and that was directly because of that unit. And it's funny because there's a really great live DVD that I have of them from England when they were playing on this tour, and on what's his name now, Tony Banks, his keyboard setup.
Mm-hmm.
They actually had that drum machine right there. They actually even gave it a name. I forget what they named it, but they actually gave it a name, and they'd actually go and start it, like physically push it to start it for certain things. And it was really odd. Like, instead of making it such a hindrance, they almost made it like a member of the band and made it like into kind of like a comical bit on stage. This thing. So it's interesting that, and the record did really good. It had 3 singles that came out from it. Turn It On Again, which came out March 8th, 1980. Duchess, which came out May 9th, 1980. And I think this must be an error. Of course, this is Wikipedia, so there's going to be an error somewhere. But the 3rd single is said it's Misunderstanding, which is correct, but it says that the release date of that single was May 10th, which would have been the next day after Duchess. So I don't think they would have released. Weird. I don't think they would have released a single the next day after a second single. So maybe it's just an incorrect dating. But I do know that Misunderstanding was, in fact, one of the singles off of the album. So, and one of the bigger ones at that too. Yeah. So. Like I said, great album. That was the one I just showed you was my Canadian pressing, and that was a later pressing of it, because here is the Canadian original release. It's pretty much the same thing. The only difference in it, which right away makes it stand out as the original pressing of it, is that you'll notice the center label is more of a custom one as opposed to the red, green, and of the Atlantic label, right? So this is and I believe this was probably one of the first times actually that they had a custom center label done for one of their albums. So
cool.
It did, like I said, I keep saying it sold very well. And again, when records do that, you know that there's always going to be some sort of brouhaha behind it, because you have the original people who always were saying, the band was not the same without Peter Gabriel. And then when the people who like Phil Collins in this era of it turn around and say, well, that's great, but when Phil Collins came in, they sold 10 times the amount of records and were much more successful without him. Yeah. Then they always say, yeah, but that's because he went commercial. And then you have the back and forth with it. Me personally, I like both eras. I've always loved them. I think Trick of the Tail, for example, is one of the most brilliant records. And being that it was a record that came out right after he left, and it was the first record that they did without Peter Gabriel, I mean, what a strong record that was. But, I mean, at this point, I think they had found their legs. They knew what kind of music they wanted to do. And they went ahead, put it on tape, put it out. And I think that they were correct, because it sold very well. They did some great tours, some big tours. And in 1980, I can definitely say this was one of the records that were on a lot of top 20 album charts. So that's my first selection.
That's cool. I used to have that album. I had 2 Genesis albums, and that was one of them. I had that in Abacab.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
But I haven't restocked those yet into my collection, the vinyl. So Excuse me. So yeah, that's a cool pick. I remember listening to that, and there's a lot of good music
Yeah,
on there.
definitely.
So that's a good pick. I wasn't expecting that one actually from today.
For once, we didn't pick the same thing.
No, I don't think we're gonna pick the same thing today. Okay, so I'm gonna go chronologically, or I guess maybe by date. Chronologically by date in
Hmm.
1980. So this album I'm gonna pull out here came out in February of
Okay.
1980. And let me get rid of this silver sleeve thing here. And it is by it's Linda Ronstadt.
Oh, okay.
It's Mad Love, and this is the album that all the around that time you had all the newer wave stuff, right? Like
Oh yeah.
uh, Elvis Costello, Blondie, whatever,
Police.
Cars, Police, and so on, right? She kind of took her stab at that music, and actually, normally she has at least a little bit of country rock on some of her albums, or just straight pop,
Hmm.
pop rock. And this one, she took a gamble, and you know what? It worked. She was able to put and sing. I mean, she can morph and sing these songs the way they need to be sung. Just a great singer. So this album, again, 1980. This is actually a promo of it, and it reached number 5, or debuted at number 5 on Billboard album chart, which is pretty good.
Pretty good. That's pretty
Yeah.
high up.
Yeah, and the singles were, I can't remember. One of them was Mad Love, though. She had a number of singles on this thing. I could probably tell you by looking at here. Mad Love was a single. How Do I Make You was a single. I believe Hurt So Bad was another single. And maybe another one. I'm thinking I Can't Let Go, possibly. But she chose a bunch of great songs. She even chose, Party Girls on here. Elvis Costello song. Okay, which is a great Elvis Costello song. And she does it fantastic. Actually, she does 2 Elvis Costello songs on this. She does Girls Talk also,
Oh, nice.
which is another written song. And I like Elvis Costello. She has Neil Young on here. Just picks these songs. Some are newer songs, written songs, and then some are other, by other artists. It's just fantastic. So anyway, on the back side of the album, you got all the lyrics,
Oh, that's interesting.
which you sometimes see. The Beatles did it first on Sgt. Pepper's,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And then some artists do that. There's been a couple other albums I have lyrics on the back. I think there's a Billy Joel album like that too.
Hmm.
So the inner sleeve for this promo copy, I think all the regular first pressing sleeves were pink. Kind of goes in with the coloring of some of the outer side sleeve. So what we have here we go. Here's let's see that. It's a white
Oh, nice. Yeah.
promo label, Asylum Records. She's had switched back from Capitol to Asylum and back and forth. I don't know, a couple of years during that time. I don't think this was. I'm trying to think what this was mastered by or anything like that, but I can't remember, and I can't really see it. I don't think it has the Mastering Lab M. Mastering Lab M.
Oh, it's the main one. Yeah.
So main one, which makes sense for a promo copy too, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So while Callie said I had this one, I'll bring it. There's another one. Actually, there. This one I got not that long ago. This is a repress, 180 gram of the same album.
Oh, nice.
Came out on Friday Music.
Okay.
I think it was last year. And this one does not have that pink inner sleeve, but it has something else. Instead of the pink inner sleeve, it has a
pink vinyl.
Yeah, it's like a, I don't know if you can tell here, but it's like a marble, peak marble kind of vinyl.
Yeah, I can see it.
So it's heavyweight, 180 gram, you know. This does say in the inner groove on this one, which is interesting. It says thank you, Linda, on that side, and then the other side, I don't know if it says anything different. Nope, just on the one side it had thank you, Linda, and I'm not sure I can't remember who mastered this one. Probably it might say here for this release. I don't think I have that information in front of me. Mastering Lab again by Doug Sachs and Mike Reese. That's the original mastering. So I don't know if they took the original masters.
Well, usually on Friday Music, there's a guy named Joe there that does those ones.
Is that Joe Riagoso?
Yeah, he's the guy who runs Friday Music there.
Which he may have been the one doing that, but that one sounds pretty good for a repress too. They did a pretty good job with that one. So that's I like a lot of her albums. It's not my favorite of hers, but it's pretty darn good for what she was going for there. It came out pretty darn good. So that's my first pick.
Very nice.
For today.
And it's interesting because Friday Music has one of those reputations of either doing some really brilliant, fantastic represses, or sometimes they've been kind of frowned at, sometimes as taking shortcuts, that sometimes their artwork isn't as good, that they use some, they're not in focus as much, like if they use photographs and stuff like that. But
right.
I guess at the end of the day, really, if you're going for the remaster, you want to hope that the music sounds good. I mean, I could live with an out of focus photo, but if it sounds like crap, then I wouldn't be too pleased, right? So, but yeah, so it's a very interesting selection, and I kind of smiled when you said that the first one was a promo copy, because I'm getting used to the idea that you usually start off yours with promo stuff. You usually have a lot of these white label releases.
I've been purposely, when I go out and try to restock a record, as of late, at least if I don't have it in my collection, I try to get the promo first, if possible. If reasonably priced, So.
Yeah, because they can be quite pricey, some of those.
Oh yeah.
Very nice. That's a good one, and definitely one that I wouldn't have, obviously, because I'm not that she's a bad artist. I think she's great. Yeah. And in fact, I like a lot of the stuff that she's done. In fact, I remember there was a special about Graceland with Paul Simon, and he talked about her a lot.
Well, she's saying his album.
Yeah. So I know that she's definitely a force to be reckoned with in the music business. So
yeah, great
pick. Okay.
Thank you.
My number 2.
Okay.
Again, is going to be one that's not going to be a surprise. Again, in the world of progressive rock, these guys are very much known. This record came out August 18th, 1980. And I'm starting to notice a trend here with my selection, and this was totally fluke. I didn't even notice this. Like when I was picking them, I just picked them because I wanted to talk about them. But a lot of these records seem to be albums that signify some sort of transition or change within the band. And this band is no different. In fact, this change to some people was almost looked like as the last nail in the coffin, almost, or like the bell tolling for this band. But while this record came out and had mixed response, and the tour that came for it in the United States was all sold out, the tour in England for it afterwards did not go so well. In fact, it did so badly that the band split for a while after it. But, and the funny thing about this record too, before I show it to you, I know people sometimes hate when I do this, how I drag on before I show the record, but deal with it.
Yeah, deal with it.
And that is that this album was very much a record that, like I said, people kind of didn't like at first, but now years later has become a record that is way up in people's love in this band, and it's an album that they did in full during a concert tour. They did the whole, like they played the whole album live, and so I could only be talking about one band when you're talking about doing whole albums live, and that's Yes. And the album I'm talking about is Drama.
Yeah, I kind of thought you were going to do that one.
Now this one, and as we know, since you are a well-educated man, you know what I mean with the transition is that Trevor Horn and Jeff Downs, formerly of the Buggles, were the ones who replaced John Anderson and Rick Wakeman in the band for this record. So people right away were like, what? You got a bunch of, pop artists to come in and join this band? Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you something. This album is one of my favorites as well. And it's because of many things. They went back to a little bit of a more, I'm not going to say heavy because they were never heavy, but they had a little bit more attitude, a little bit more punch to their music. And I mean, the opening song on this record, Machine Messiah, is like 10 minutes long. There was no losing the progressive nature of their music on this. Yeah. They had a lot of songs that were like, 5 minutes plus 6 minutes, 7 minutes. And they did some odd things. Like they had a song called White Card. It was only like 1 minute and 20 seconds long, but it was really interesting. It was a piano piece with vocals, right? Mm-hmm. And some great bass guitar work. I mean, if you like Chris Squire's bass playing, you really want to look into this record. I mean, it's fantastic. Now, I'm not going to open this one up for one reason. This is my Spanish promo copy of it. Now, I will show you the record.
That's interesting looking like for Atlantic.
Yeah, and it sounds really good. I mean, as you know, being a collector of promo copies, they're usually the ones to go for because of that, right? Because you want to get a good sounding copy, and they spared no expense in making a good copy of this. But just to show you I'm not a bad guy, I did bring another copy of it that I can show you more in detail. Now let me just refer here for 1 second. I do have a sticker here. This is the, I think this is 2016, I believe, or 16 or 17 reissue of this album. Now, this was done by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio, so this is going to be one of those fantastic reissues, and it is. It sounds absolutely amazing. Like I would put it alongside of the promo copy, no problem. It sounds that good. Yeah, he did a great job, and I know I've sung the praises of Kevin Gray a few times on our episodes, and with good reason, because he did such a great job with this record. I would highly recommend getting this. I mean, if you're looking for a good sounding copy of this record, this is the one to get. Because, and what's great about that is that because they're so available, because they're the newest versions, then it's not a big hunt. It's not something that you're gonna have to spend hundreds of dollars to get, right? Yep. So
yeah, that's your normal label, kind of normal Atlantic type colors.
This is like a standard one.
Yep.
And of course on the Dead Wax here, you do have the KG at CA, which is Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio.
There you go.
And and just a little bit more about this record. Jeff Downs, who is now with the band currently as their permanent keyboard player, he joined back again like in 2011. Just did a fantastic job on this record, I thought, because one of the things that Steve Howe in particular liked about these guys was that because they were both producers as well as musicians, they were on top of all the latest trends in music. So a lot of Jeff Downs' keyboards were very of that time and top notch for that period. So in 1980, he had all these, Prof keyboards, PG keyboards. He had, obviously the Moogs and all that stuff, but he had all the latest keyboards, and it really made their sound lift the whole thing. Because Rick Wakeman, he used a lot of Hammond organ, Mellotron, and Moog, but he didn't have some of these Prophet keyboards and all these new things in there. So their sound developed and became modernized because of it. And and because you have somebody like Trevor Horn, who's a producer in his own right. He contributed a lot in terms of ideas for production and stuff like that. And Eddie Ufford, who did a lot of their production of all their original classic records, was hired back to do all the backing tracks for this record, which is interesting. He was only producing the backing tracks. Once they did all the overdubbing, it was just Yes who produced it from there on in and mixed it themselves with an engineer, obviously, right? And it was recorded at Townhouse and Sarm East, which is pretty much a well-known recording studio in England, and pretty much now the headquarters of where you have Trevor Horn doing most of his work out of. And it's funny, Roundhouse is mentioned in here as well, and Rack Studios. And what's funny about that is Steve Howe, and this is something that he got into doing a lot later on as well, is he would do his guitar overdubs at a separate studio away from the band. Now, I don't know if that's because he went so gung-ho sometimes with it, and it drove them nuts with how many overdubs he would do on guitar, because it was known that he would do so many things in there that when they would go to mix it, they'd be like, okay, we don't need that, and they would kind of, selectively choose what they thought was good in it. And I mean, for the most part, I think they made the right selection, because this album sounds great. He used a lot of great different guitars. He used Les Pauls, Telecasters, all kinds of things, and it sounds good. And just like how Jeff Downes, used a lot of different keyboards to get different sounds, Steve Howe's very good at doing that as well with guitar selections. So this album is definitely a classic. There was only one single off of this album, that was Into the Lens, which is a pretty cool song. And it's funny, because when I'm looking at the notes here, it says that this album peaked at number 2 in the UK and number 18 in the United States, and it was the first album since 1971, not to reach gold though for them. Really? So while it reached that high initially, I think once people started realizing who was in the band, because their manager was smart. When they were promoting the tour of the United States for this record, they had old photographs. John Anderson was still on it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So of course it sold out. Then and there was so many stories of where people went on the tour and they came out in Madison Square Garden. People were like, okay, this is great, but who the hell are those guys on there?
Right.
So the tour went decently well, but like they said, when they went to the UK, people were already on to the game, and a lot of people started heckling and didn't like the idea that John Anderson wasn't there, nor Rick Wakeman. So, but now, like I said, many years later, people love this record, have embraced it fully, and is one of the go-to albums, I think, as far as if you like classic Yes. So that's my selection for 1980, and my second selection, in fact. So I think it's a great album, and if you don't own a Yes record, this might even be a good one to start with.
Yep, that's a good pick. I got that record after I forget, we went over it another time, this record, and I had to listen to it. I think it might have been the very first episode we did, or something like that. But that one I bought. I saw it. I got it somewhere at a record store, and it was in great shape. I think it's the first pressing of it too. Mm-hmm. But I remember listening to it, and I remember there's that song on the second side that I thought parts of it sounded like The Police. Mm-hmm. The way, the rhythm of it and so on was interesting. So, but yeah, that's a good pick.
I'm curious though. So, how did you like it overall?
I liked it all overall pretty good. I think it's pretty good. I wouldn't have bought it otherwise.
Yeah.
So, I'm not as heavy into progressive as you are. I get into progressive, but I can only go so far with it, and because some progressives is too much for me.
Yeah.
But whether it's I like They're Okay, and of course Rush and Project Gemini, which I like too. So yeah, those are the ones. And then some Old Yellow has some progressive stuff going on too. So All right, cool. So let me pull this another sleeve off of here. All right, so my next second pick is from March of 1980. March 31st, 1980 was released. And this is a band that I didn't get this when it first came out. I didn't get their the first album I got of this group was in, I don't want to say 84. I can't remember what it was. 83, maybe it was 83. Could have been 82. I don't know. I have to remember now. But I went back in the catalog and found, listened to some of the other stuff because I liked what I was hearing. So I said, "Oh, okay, I'll check out some other stuff." So this band is the Scorpions.
Ah, very nice.
And this is the Animal Magnetism album. You could say this is kind of a sexist cover, or if you're like what is it, Spinal Tap? What's wrong with sexy? It's sexist. But a lot of their albums, I noticed their covers are kind of sexist or interesting,
Yeah.
risque kind of stuff. But it's kind of different. And here's the back of it. It's basically the same thing. This one has this is actually another promo.
Let's see the gold stamp there.
Yeah, but it's a gold stamp promo on this one. At first pressing. So this album, and let me pull out this stuff here. This has a lot of good stuff on it. I mean, good if you like any Scorpions. And I started with Blackout, right? That's why that's the album I started with, and then I started going backwards, and there's some good stuff if you go back. So this one has it's not a record sleeve, it's an insert of
lyric insert
of the lyrics and some pictures, and like the feeding the dog something, Scooby Snack, I think, or something. So yeah, that's that one. So here, let me get to the vinyl. Plain white sleeve on this one. They're on Mercury, which we've seen this label before many times. Here we go. There. So
very nice.
Yeah. This one I believe was, it's a sterling pressing, I think, of this one. And HW is on one side. HW. And then
Howie Weinberg or Weisberg.
Yeah, but the other, I think the other side is not.
Oh, it's one of those, eh?
Yeah.
RL maybe.
Shoot, I can't get the other one. I remember this one has two different. Yeah, it could be Ludwig on this one, your side, but yeah, usually it's one or the other, or maybe one other guy. But this has some great. I mean, great music. I mean, it didn't get to platinum until '91. It was 11 years later. I mean, it went gold in '84. About the time, remember, they started gaining popularity about that time, so people were starting to buy the other records. Singles from this, they released Lady Starlight, and then Make It Real. The Zoo used to play
That's a great
on
song.
FM. Yeah, The Zoo is a long song, and it's a good song. And there's Hey You also. So, but yeah, and Don't Make No Promises, which the song is like, don't make some promises your body can't keep. 20th Century Man, Lady Star. Yeah, I mean, it's some Lady Starlight. It was a 6-minute song. It's pretty long for them. And then Falling in Love. It's just a solid album from beginning to end. Rocking. If you like Scorpions, just great riffs, great singing. I think this is the album. I think this is the one where I think was it Rudolph Schenker had, or the other Schenker. One of the Schenker brothers left. I'm getting mixed up now.
Well, Michael Schenker was with them for a little while.
Yeah, Michael Schenker had left, I think.
Rudolph's been the mainstay of the band.
Yeah. Maybe it was the other album I'm thinking of, the one before it, where he played on one track, and that was it, the last of Michael Schenker. But anyway, again, it's one of my favorite Scorpion albums. There's a few of them that I like a lot, but I think it's a good one if you like hard rock and good catchy riffs, catchy songs, good production. I'm trying to remember who produced this one. Maybe it says on here. Produced by Dieter Dirks.
Dieter Dirks did a lot of their big records from this point on. Like, he really was the guy who turned it around for them. Because he did Blackout, he did Love at First Sting, and I think that's where they just flew off the charts, kind of thing.
Yeah, Blackout and Love at First Sting were the real big ones for them. But yeah, Dieter Dirks, I've seen his name probably a few times then on these albums of Scorpion. So, but that's my pick for that. I thought you didn't think you'd pick that one.
No, but I mean, I love the Scorpions. In fact, that's one of my fondest memories as a teenager. When they used to do a bunch of concerts here in Toronto at a place called Kingswood Music Theatre. It was like a theater that was outdoors. It was like a Molson Amphitheater kind of deal, but it was part of an amusement park here called Canada's Wonderland, right? And they had that attached to it. So at one point they were bringing in all kinds of great acts. I mean, that was the reason to go to Canada's Wonderland then. You got David Lee Roth, Cinderella. They had these tours like Cinderella, Bullet Boys, and all these bands together. And I remember seeing Scorpions.
Yeah.
It was Great White.
Great White.
Johnny Lane, Great White, and Scorpions. And it was a great show. And the Scorpion show was long. It was like, back then they were doing 2.5-hour sets, which was kind of unheard of back when I saw them in like 87, 88. It was for Crazy World when they came, when I saw them. So, and it was really cool. I mean, they've always been great live. They sound great. Yeah. And Klaus Meine sings just unbelievably well.
Yeah.
So great choice. And I like the fact, well, obviously because of the year you were restricted to what you could pick, but I mean, what a great album anyways. I mean, it's
really good, solid.
Yeah, it's not all the commercial stuff that you got to hear on the radio. It was more than a lot of what I deem cooler stuff, like The Zoo is awesome. That's what a great song that is, Yeah. So great pick. Very good pick, in fact.
Thanks.
So my last pick is probably something you won't be surprised about either, but wouldn't put it in the prog category, this one.
Okay.
This one is more commercially friendly, I guess, or at least a commercially more friendly artist, but throughout the years, he's been quite a chameleon, to say the least, as far as changing styles and different approaches. And if there's one thing that I'll always tip the hat to this guy for, is, man, does he know how to pick his guitar players, this guy. Unbelievable. And in 1980, he came to an end of his current record contract he had at that point with RCA. And RCA knew that he was leaving, that there was no re-signing, that he already had a plan to go on to greater things. Mainly because they were annoyed with him with a couple of records he had done before that he did a lot of experimental work on and didn't sell as well as some of his prior albums before. So, and this is in his book. I love reading this part, how he goes, you know what, this is my last record with you guys. He had a big meeting with them and said, to show that I'm kind of a cool, nice guy, I'm going to really try to make a record for you that's going to sell decent and go out on a high note with this record label. And I think he did just that, because this record, while it may not be up in the category of some of his other greatest known records, to me, I love this record, and it's another great example of finding an awesome guitar player to play on it. I won't hold you in suspense any longer.
Yes. It's killing me. Oh, yes.
David Bowie.
Yeah.
I mean, what better album than, Scary Monsters, Super Creeps, right? Now this, what I'm holding in my hands, is the 2017 reissue that came out in his box set, the vinyl box set that came out. So this is an absolutely killer reproduction of this record. So when you get it, it comes with the original style lyric sleeve. This is the actual. It's a sleeve, right?
Oh yes.
But they broke it apart like this.
Okay.
Right?
Nice.
Now the vinyl is a really nice heavy 180 gram vinyl. I mean, I know these box sets are really pricey. The Bowie ones are like 200 and change,
Sure.
but they're worth every cent because the book that comes with these things, they go through every album, like the mixing of it and how they talk with the producers, everything.
Oh, good.
It's worth getting. So this is kind of like a recreation of a Black Label RCA, and you'll notice the kind of RCA-ish kind of writing for Bowie at the top.
Right. Yeah, the fonts.
So, yeah. And because at that point, RCA started going into 3 colors. They had an orange center label, a tan center label, and then they went to black.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's this one, and I do have another copy of it. And this is Bowie is a artist that I find I don't go as nuts buying multiple copies of it. Like, for example, another 1980s record that I thought about doing, and I didn't for this particular reason, was Kiss's Unmasked.
Yeah,
and
I know.
Because I have 16 or 15 different variations of that record. It's unbelievable. Like, France, England, Japan, every possible thing. I have like so many different copies of it. But this one I kind of kept, Bowie I kind of keep to really, really fantastic copies of it. And what I try to do with artists like him is I try to stick with Canadian, US, and the UK with him. And this is the UK first, the Canadian first pressing of it. Now, as you'll notice, this is the inner sleeve. Looks familiar to the one I showed you before, right? Except this is the
real sleeve.
This is not it's not a pull apart.
It came out.
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, they had 3 different variations through the time in RCA of labels, and this one came out on the tan.
Oh yes, yeah. I have some of those.
RCA Victor, to be exact, I suppose, if you take a look at it.
Right. The only other RCA label, Black Label, was with the dog.
Yeah.
Listen to the gramophone kind of thing, right?
That's correct, yeah. And the orange one looked similar to this one, except it just was orange. It was like the same layout idea and stuff like that.
Yep, and, that's correct.
So this album came out in, let me just give me 1 second here to get back to my notes. September 12th, 1980. And it had a few singles. Ashes to Ashes came out August 8th. Fashion came out September 12th. Scary Monster, Super Creeps came out in January 2nd, 1981. And Up the Hill Backwards with a song called Crystal Japan, which is a B-side non-album track, which is a really interesting instrumental, came out March 1981. Sorry, I just stupidly hit a button and put it backwards, so just give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. So, and again, when I was talking about, getting great people to play on their record and stuff like that, I mean, he has collaborations here with Brian Eno, which he was known for doing with his Low album, Heroes, and Lodger. That's the Berlin trilogy. And those are the records I was talking about earlier, how the label was not pleased with him making experimental records that didn't sell as well. Those were the ones. But now, of course, they're heralded as like some great artistic piece now, right? So, and on here, you have, of course, Robert Fripp on guitar.
Yeah, Robert Fripp. Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, being from King Crimson, and his guitar work is all over this record, and it's just great, great stuff. If you like Robert Fripp's playing, then man, this is a good record to get. Just like Heroes was a great record to get if you wanted to hear his kind of work on there as well. He had a great rhythm section on here. Dennis Davis, George Murray, and Carlos Alomar, right? Who was with them, and they've been with them since Station to Station. Those guys, so they're already a pretty solid unit as far as a rhythm section goes. So it was a great album. I mean, you have like the opening track, It's No Game, has a lot of really great heavy Robert Fripp guitar playing on it. Ashes to Ashes, everybody knows that song.
Yes.
Scary Monster is a great song. And the funny thing is, Up the Hill Backwards is an interesting song. It was a song that they did an acoustic sort of version of it at the beginning of the concert tour for the Glass Spider tour, which was for the Never Let Me Down album, a record that people really stick their nose up at and say it's the worst album he's ever made, but it had one of the best live tours, huge stage, like the biggest stage probably constructed at that time, and also had another great guitar player on tour with him. Somebody named Peter Frampton was his guitar player at that time. So you can see what I'm talking about here. You have Mick Ronson, who played with him for a long while.
Yeah.
You have Robert Fripp. You got Peter Frampton. You had Adrian Belew played with him on Lodger, right? And the tour on that. So I mean, talk about knowing how to pick your guitar players. You know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, so again, this is a great record. I would highly recommend it. As far as reissues, and if you're trying to find other things, there are some great reissue sites online. Like when you type in David Bowie reissues, where you can go into great detail about what CDs to get, what ones are better than others. A lot of people say to stay away from certain US versions of the CDs that go for the German pressing, that they're stellar, fantastic. Open sounding, really not as compressed. Like if you want to get into really just nerdy detailing, like we like to get into, there are a lot of great sites for that if you're looking for reissues. For me personally, I like to go for, like I said, the Canadian and the British stuff. I even have some cassettes now of his records. I find some of the cassettes sound really, really good. Like especially the older ones, they sound good because I mean, think about it. It's on tape. What are we trying to do with the analog? You're trying to get back, stuff off of the original tapes, right?
Yeah. Right.
You put the tapes on. If you keep them in good condition and listen to them and keep your tape player good. I mean, Tony Visconti has said many times that a great kept cassette and a good tape player can sound as good sometimes as some of the masters he's heard. So, it's all about condition and how you keep stuff too, right?
True.
But again, this record, I think David did what he promised. He made a great record for RCA to leave on, because we all know that after this record came out, there was a little bit of a break. And I think that there was, after that, a little bit of a gap. And then out came Let's Dance, which broke him through the stratosphere on EMI records and was the biggest thing that ever came out for David Bowie. So he already knew ahead of time that was going to happen. That's why he wanted out of RCA, right? Because he didn't like their contract, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Right, so there you go. So that was my third and final pick.
For third pick. Good pick. I had that album. It's another one that I had, just like your Genesis one, that I haven't restocked yet. But that was my first Bowie album I had bought. I know that. I know it was I got it because of, I think it was Ashes to Ashes. Hearing that, and then I went and got the album. And it's pretty good. Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's different, too. I mean, I guess it's probably due to, like Robert Fripp's, guitar playing and stuff like that. But, it was a good album. I remember enjoying listening to it. So it's another one. I need to, one of many that I have to go out and, still
restock
the old collection back up again. So good pick.
Great.
I like that
Thank
one.
you.
Lots of good information too on that one. Okay, so my final one. Oops, I gotta move my stuff around here. Final pick is came out May 16th, 1980. Everyone knows this artist. You should know this artist. We don't know you. I don't know where you've been. This one is Paul McCartney. McCartney 2. This is as a lot of you may know, that he had the album McCartney when he first went solo, when the Beatles broke up, and where he recorded all the instruments himself and so on, right? And this is kind of the same kind of thing. That's why he calls it McCartney 2. It's kind of the same kind of thing where he records all his stuff in his like home little studio and whatnot, plays all the instruments and everything. So this is something that I had restocked recently. Probably 2 years ago, I guess. Here's it. And I think these are usually photographs taken by Linda McCartney, his wife at the time. And this one, I don't know if this one, the first ones, I remember, this is not a promo, surprisingly enough.
Surprise.
But it is a first pressing, because the first pressings had, here it is.
Nice.
It came with the extra single of Coming Up live at Glasgow. So
that's a promo.
So that's the one you would hear. Yeah, technically, that's the one you would hear on the radio. They played the live version as a single on the radio, but the studio version didn't play on the radio. It was just on the studio version of the album. So I guess that's why they did that.
What's on the B side of that?
Good question.
On the 45, there's something it says on there. What does it say?
No, this is a one-sided record.
There
Play
you go.
other side, it says. So if I look at it, does it have anything on it? It's like a groove that doesn't play, but it probably goes all the way to the middle, or it's a solid groove where it just doesn't move. That's the way it looks.
So it's just a one-sided single.
Yeah, one-sided single.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I found that in a used record store. I was like, oh yeah, I used to have that. I need to get it, and it had the extra single. So I said, okay, that's something we need to get. All right. So it's a pretty good album. I mean, he writes good music,
Oh yeah.
This inner sleeve. The lyrics, of course, and then here's
love that picture.
Yeah, with like one of his kids tugging on his shirt while he's trying
a big 8-track machine there.
And you can see his machine he has.
Oh, it's actually 16 tracks. Sorry.
Yeah, and he has his microphones and stuff. There's like he's trying to get his kid's trying to get his attention while he's trying to, it looks like record music. And this also comes on to Columbia, which he was with for a long time. Columbia Records label. NPL was one of his stamps there too. So it had stuff like, of course, Coming Up, people probably know. Other standout songs on here were like Temporary Secretary. Waterfalls was a good song on the way. I mean, I don't know. I like it. It's, stripped down stuff. It's not overly produced because it's just kind of keeping it simple. He wrote this song called instrumental. It's called Frozen Jap, which I think is it came from shortly before that. He was arrested in Japan, right, and put in there. I don't know, it was a jail or prison there for a little while. He was held there because they found marijuana.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't too happy about that he was lucky to get out of there. Actually, I think.
Yeah.
One of These Days is a real good song on here too. I think I don't think there's anything on the inner of this. Oh, this is a S. I don't know if that. I'm not sure who actually did the final mastering of this one, and it might say somewhere here on that, but I don't see anything. So, and I guess it did pretty well on the charts from what I remember here. Let's see if I have that information. Here we go. Let's see. U.S. Billboard went to number 3.
Oh, nice. That's a very good ranking.
That's pretty good. Yeah, number 3. And then let's see. Do you have the Canadian RPM album charts number 5?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's really good, actually.
So, and it's probably based duly to, again, Coming Up, which was it was on the radio quite a lot. I played a lot. It was a hit single. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite songs. It's a good, catchy tune.
Yeah.
And again, they played the live version, which is on that little 7-inch single. And then there's, the studio version is a little bit different. Not too much different, but it has a different feel to it than that live. And I think that actually the live version does sound better, in my opinion.
Yeah, you think so?
Yep. Just the feel of it is better than the studio version that he did. So I think it was a good choice to release it. So that's a good album. Oh, and before I finish, then I do, like you, Mark.
Yes.
I have another copy of it.
Ah.
Now this one here is pretty recent. Last year I got it, 180 gram, and this is limited edition clear vinyl.
Oh, nice.
And it hasn't been opened.
Ooh, you left it sealed.
But you know what? I'm gonna open it.
Good man.
So
that's the way to do it.
Here's first, and I'll probably play it now. Because I bought some of they released some of the McCartney stuff last year on color vinyl. A selection of the albums.
And just to let you know, I was looking through the Discogs while you were talking about this, and it says here that version, the U.S. version of the album that came out May 21st, 1980, was mastered, was pressed at Columbia Record Plant in Carl Lenting, Georgia, and was mastered and cut by Malcolm Davies.
Malcolm Davies, I think I've probably seen that name before.
So that is who cut your album.
Okay, so they replicated everything in here, of course.
Yes.
What else did they replicate? There is a download card for that.
Nice.
I hope I did that. Anyway, I hope I already have it. If not, I'm going to have to do it. I think I had the remastered version on CD, so I think I'm okay. All right, so here's the vinyl. Actually, wow, it looks like it's marbly clear. It's interesting. It's not normal. I see, but anyway, here it is here.
Very nice.
Like upside down?
That's upside down.
Now it's upside down. Okay.
That's good, yeah.
There we go. All right. But Perfect. It's kind of I want to say it's a marbly clear. It's not like a see-through kind of clear. It's like you have a dirty window.
Yeah, yeah. Like a smoky.
Yeah. It's different. Because I have, I think on a prior episode I had, or one of them, I had that clear vinyl of ELO, and you could see right through the darn thing.
Yeah.
This one's
I have a Stones record like that.
It's different. But this has the lyrics again. And picture. I think it's a big picture than the other one. I think it's the same. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and play that one today. since I
And that
opened
one
it.
was, and it says here that that one is remastered by Guy Massey and Steve Rook.
Okay. Well, we're gonna see. I'm gonna play it today.
And yeah, it looks very well done, remastered at Abbey Road,
Oh yeah.
made in Germany, apparently.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to listening to it and see how it compares to the original pressing.
So, do you think this record is better than the first McCartney?
It's different. I kind of stand on their own kind of thing, but
Yeah.
I mean, if you're really going to come down to it, the first McCartney is probably the better to get, just because it's so classic.
Yeah.
Some has, some very, maybe I'm amazed, and some other songs on the first McCartney. I would say yes. You. This is not regarded, I don't think, by McCartney fans as, as highly regarded as the first McCartney solo album. No. So
Yeah.
So McCartney, the first album, is the one to get, and I also had that one. I think I had that one on red vinyl, that repressing that they did, just like they did with this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good stuff.
It's interesting. You've kind of piqued my interest in the McCartney stuff because I'm a collector of Beatle records. I have a lot of their ones, mono pressing this and Friends pressing mono, all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I've never really delved into either member's solo stuff.
Oh, really?
Mainly because Lennon kind of turned me off a bit when he started hooking up with Yoko, and I thought once she got involved with his stuff, all her caterwauling and yeah stuff kind of was like nothing that I wanted to hear, so I kind of stayed away from his stuff. George Harrison stuff I wasn't too aware of until I started getting into it now, and All Things Must Pass is something I'm going to definitely get in the near future. And to be honest, I wasn't too familiar with McCartney's solo works. Now I know that they've been re-releasing a whole ton of his back catalog on different colored vinyl and stuff. So yeah. I think I might look into this Paul McCartney 1 and Paul McCartney 2 first and see how I like those. I've been told, and from what I've heard, to stay away from Ringo's output, that it's pretty miss more than
Ringo?
hit.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah. It's if you're gonna get anything of Ringo, get his Blast from the Past. I think it's kind of like his greatest hits or best of back in the mid '70s. As far as McCartney, there's some other really good stuff. Lots of great stuff he put out. I actually like Ram a lot.
Yeah,
Ram is
a lot of people talk about that one.
Yeah. I really like that album. Then, of course, Band on the Run was huge. That was a huge. Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff. I mean, then you go past more in the early '80s. Tug of War. Tug of War was really good. Produced by George Martin. And it's very, very, very good too. So yeah. It's a lot to choose from, and I know you turned off by John, but John Lennon had some really good stuff. I particularly like the first Lennon, the Plastic Ono Band. Yeah. I mean, that's just really raw and really, really good. And Imagine, of course, is a very good album too.
Yeah,
and then
those two are the ones I'm thinking about mainly because I think that. Plastic Ono Band, I've heard a lot of it because of the making of DVD that I have, and it sounds like that's it is pretty raw. I mean, that was done on 8-track, if you believe it or not. That thing, yeah. And I do want to get Imagine because it does have a Yes connection as well with Alan White drumming on it, who is now the longtime drummer of Yes now. So Alan was on that record, so I think I might grab those two.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. So
that's it.
There's our 3 selections from 1980. I think we're definitely going to look into doing a few more episodes of different various years. I think I like this kind of format. It definitely brings out some more variety and stuff rather than focusing on one,
Yeah.
artist or one, producer or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it went over very good. I hope all of you out there enjoyed this and learned a few things or two, or maybe might have found some inspiration to buy some new records. And leave your comments, of course, and let us know what you think are some of the great records of 1980. I'm sure me and Ken will be more than happy to respond back. And yeah, so until next time, which will be pretty soon again, it's not too long till the next month. And we will see you then with another episode. So until next month, this is Mark Anthony K. and Mr. Kevin Keenan saying bye, or Ken Keenan, sorry. Mr. Ken Keenan.
It's okay.
Saying bye for now.
All right.